We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi and this is part 10 of What If Naruto Sends Himself Back in Time to Fix His Mistakes. Naruto, at 26, has lived through 10 years of war. At the end, with nothing left to call home, he sends himself back to the beginning, to the day of his younger self's graduation, in an attempt to change it all. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 10, Fallout. Entering the office, Haruki took note of the desk and the various papers stacked about it. The office held an air of refinement that belied the subtle signs of chaos that anyone that wasn't used to hectic office life would miss. There was a small couch and coffee table to the right where the gifts they had brought sat. Hayashi caught Haruki's glance at them as he turned and stood in front of his desk. He resists the urge to smile. "Thank you for those, by the way." Haruki quickly looked away as if a child caught in a cookie jar. The comment hadn't been made to embarrass the redhead, but rather to try and break the tension in the air. It appeared to have worked because not a moment later the Jonin opened his mouth. "I will not apologize for stepping in, or take back the words I said. I will not bother making my opinion of these traditions and clan practices a secret, and I will not apologize for them. And I definitely not going to stand idly by and allow this type of treatment to continue. And I wouldn't expect you to." Hayashi interrupted once Haruki started pace. He couldn't quite keep the wry smile off his face as he did so. Haruki just stopped and blinked for a moment before tilting his head sideways almost as if confused by the statement. "You don't?" Well, apparently, he is confused. "Not at all. In fact, I would be thoroughly surprised if you did, given what I've concluded about you." Hayashi answered, smirk still firmly in place, shaking his head. Seeing Haruki's slightly surprised look, Hayashi continued and leaned back against his desk. The change in posture seemed to throw the redhead off even more. "Haruki, it is clear to anyone who would bother to pay attention that you have a very strong sense of duty and morality that supersedes the status quo. You are obviously a powerful ninja given what you've demonstrated, and if whatever has been claimed about you proves correct. You are diplomatic when you need to be, even when formality isn't what you are most comfortable with. However, because you have so much power, it is easy for you to lose sight in the balance of your decisions. That more than just your opinion matter, and just because you can beat the other person up doesn't mean you should always get your way. That's called a bully. Furthermore, you are a very guarded and secretive individual, which could be explained as your time away, but the particulars and depth of it don't add up to just that. And though whatever trauma or burden you bear may very well call for such secrecy, it doesn't stop the resulting consequence that it's hard for others to trust you because they simply can't get to know you. You are reckless in your aid to other, if your hand is any indication of your usual behavior. And before you ask, both my brother and I were there and had our Byakugan active. Of course, we saw the damage. In the end, I don't quite completely know what to make of you. Which I suppose may be your goal, but I know enough to know that you are a good man. I don't even know why I feel comfortable enough to speak so blatantly, but I think you prefer it that way. Besides, you seem to have a knack for bringing out the unexpected in people." To say that Haruki was surprised was probably an understatement. Of all the things he was planning for this encounter, this was not one of them. And if he was honest, he had absolutely no idea what to say or do. The Hayashi he knew never would do this. Apparently, his sheepish stunned silence lasted too long and Hayashi chuckled before beginning again. "So Haruki, I have taken this opportunity to privately ask for a favor and perhaps increase the debt I owe you already. Can you remove the caged bird seal, or at least alter it to not cause pain?" Suddenly sensing that weight of the question, Haruki snaps out of his reflective stunned contemplation and looks at the clan head thoughtfully for a moment as if weighing options. In actuality, Haruki probably could already remove it, though altering it was out of the question. They had never had a chance to come up with a replacement seal before. There wasn't much need for one with the extinction of the Hyuga. Haruki, after a quick discussion with Kurama about his options, decides to go with a delay tactic. "I can't currently, but given enough time and study I should be able to help. The hardest part is going to be coming up with a replacement. I find it doubtful that we will find a way to alter the seal so completely, and it still have its primary function intact. If you are willing to wait, I will help how I can." I'm sure at some other time I can explain to you the details of the sealing involved. Hayashi, whose expression had fallen initially, sprung back to life with hope at the possibility. He bowed to Haruki at the waist. Thank you, Haruki-sama. I can't express to you how grateful I am at your consent. If there is any way I can be of assistance, do not hesitate to ask. Hayashi, I'm not doing this for a favor or anything like that. I'm doing this because not only do I believe it's right, but I also because it was asked of me by someone I could consider a friend. His mind drifting back to his own dear friend, the woman he thought would be the love of his life. The fact that it would help increase Konoha's stability is just a bonus. Hayashi's eyes widen a bit before a small smile appears on his serious face. You are full of surprises, Haruki. Haruki just shrugs and tries not to make eye contact. He had had enough emotional personal engagements for one day. It was then that an idea popped into his head, courteously, of a giant fox chakra monster. There is one thing I would ask of you, Hayashi. And let me clarify, I would ask this regardless of what you have asked of me. Haruki said, suddenly completely serious, eyes focused on Hayashi with heavy intent. Hayashi, detecting the obvious shift, give Haruki his full attention. Lay off Hinata. The redhead states with absolute seriousness, with an edge of non-negotiable command. Hayashi frowns and makes to speak, but the redhead interrupts quickly. Let me finish. He says with a raised hand. I am not saying don't challenge her or don't be strict or don't raise your own daughter how you see fit. What I'm saying is that the confidence I am trying to foster that you want does not require sacrificing yourself to be the object of her opposition. It also doesn't require insults and beratement beyond honest critique. I don't need my work undone because you decided to intensify your emotional conditioning. He nearly spat the last bit but refrained, barely. Hayashi stares at Haruki for a long moment before nodding. I will keep that in mind, Haruki-san. Haruki nods and follows the man out of his office and back to the others, their business having been concluded. The two men rejoined the party and immediately the prevailing tension that had remained under the surface collapsed. The other Jonin guest visibly relaxed upon seeing Haruki return relatively calm. It was not long after this point that the Jonin bid their farewells to their students and left the compound together. Upon their departure, the children were dismissed to their own rooms, where each reflected on the events and insights of the evening. None more so than Hanabi. It was after the party had been cleared and the atmosphere returned to normal, that two Hyuga men sat in Hayashi's office, sake in hand, in the depths of the night. Hayashi for his part was still trying to make sense of all of the pieces that he had learned that night about Haruki. He honestly thought he should thank the elders in part as they provided him with an avenue to gather information on his newest ally. It was ironic, really. The collective fools had backed themselves into a corner with this stunt and he was going to enjoy hammering them with it tomorrow. But that was really a side point of the current subject that captured his mind. Who was Kazuma Haruki? Where did he come from? Why was he here? What was he a party of? He had been so tempted to press for answers in their meeting, but after the way dinner had gone he had decided that may not be the wisest course of action. Whoever he was, it was clear that Hizashi knew some of the details that were crucial given how partial he was to the man. Granted, anyone who saved your life from beyond hope could have that effect, but something about Hizashi's comments struck him as knowing and meaning more. As if trying to send a message without saying words. It was this fact that had the two tired men still awake in the first place. If Hayashi couldn't get all the answers he would like from Haruki, then he would have to go with the next best thing. His brother. So do you think he will actually be able to find a solution? The clan head asked his brother while pouring him another dish of sake. It was just the two of them now, as most of the others had long been asleep. I think he already has part of it, or he wouldn't have agreed so readily, but I think he is worried about other factors and effects it will have on Konoha as a whole. More of a timing issue than anything else, replied the twin as he sipped at his glass. He certainly is an interesting man. A good one, but FLL of mystery. The fact that he gifted me with sake of my favorite brand from my favorite year is too convenient to trust to happenstance, but for the life of me I cannot fathom how he would have known. Did you tell him? The older brother asked as he nursed his own saucer. No, I am just as surprised as you are. I honestly didn't think he would even bring gifts. That's not really his style from what I understand. As to how he could know, well, the man was a deep-cover spy in the most militarized village on the continent. I'm not surprised he found out. Hizashi replied evenly without hesitation. His brother eyed him for a second, not seemingly convinced. It wasn't a fact he shared with anyone since his wife's passing, since it had been the drink at their wedding. Still, it was a gift he appreciated greatly, so he would drop the issue for now. His power is unmistakable. A storm cloud almost formed inside that hall just from his chakra reacting to his anger. Does he have a Kekii Genkai? The clan head asked, honest curiosity seeping into his voice. I do not know, but it would not surprise me if he did. Hayashi replied. He truly didn't though, but, given what he knew about the man's title and background, it was not out of the realm of possibility even if he didn't know what to make of the abilities shown tonight. Hayashi, convinced that his brother knew nothing more, decided to try a different line of questioning. Hoping to make more sense of the redhead's mannerisms and behaviors. I can see what you meant by broken. He continued of downing the rest of his glass. It's almost as if he's crying for help but at the same time resisting every attempt to do so. What must he have been through to have that level of hollow pain bleed into his words? Was he an orphan of war? Was he a member of the Umbu Black Ops S division? Internal smirking at his own brother's attempts to fish out information from him, Hizashi decides to throw his brother a bone. I am fairly certain he is an orphan, more than that I cannot say, but I know his burden is heavy. It is for all those that carry the weight of others on their shoulders. Though I don't really know how we can help. For now we just watch him and see if more clues present themselves. Hayashi made no effort to hide the roll in his eyes at his brother's attempt to feign ignorance. Deciding to lay his cards on the table, Hayashi set his glass down and looked at Hi brother in the eyes. I know you know more than you are letting on, and I know that if you will not even tell me in absolute privacy, it is something big and something crucially important. And I trust you with that, even if I'm unsure of what to think of our mysterious friend. Just promise to tell me what you can. Kami knows I owe him a debt even more than you for what he has done for my daughter. He couldn't help the sincerity and pride that entered his voice. He truly was grateful. More than you know, Anai-san. More than you know. Hizashi replied, confirming all he knew he could for his brother before downing the rest of his saucer as well. I intend to partner with him. Hizashi continued, there is a task he has to do. Something I honestly don't know many of the details about. And knowing him, he's going to try and handle it all himself. I refuse to allow that. I owe that man my life. Hayashi didn't seem surprised by that in the slightest and just nodded. If he leaves, I will be going with him. Hizashi said, stressing his commitment. What about Niji? His brother asked, curious about his reasoning. It is for Niji that I would go. If Haruki doesn't succeed, it could be the doom for all of us. Haruki will need the help, but I will have to be strong enough to help. It's only thanks to that man that I can even see Niji. For now though, I think it is just time to prepare. The mission Haruki has is just the first step, and he still has to get past the duel first. If only there was another way. The two men continue to sit in silence, each thinking on the moving pieces and how they would affect their lives and Konoha. Neither one heard the small footsteps as they quietly retreated down the hall. The three Jonin had barely made their way around their block before Haruki relaxed and sighed. Well, that went better than expected. His two companions snorted almost at his candid summation of the evening. What did Hayashi want with you? Kurenai asked, curious as they continues to walk. The redhead turned to her before looking up at the clear night sky. The moon was clearly visible just over the tops of the buildings, just beginning its nightly passage across the sky. He just wanted to talk and asked a small favor. But I kinda promised we keep it a secret for now. He hadn't really, but somehow he doubted seriously that Hayashi wanted him blabbing what they had discussed to anyone. Honestly, he was happy people didn't know. The last thing he wanted was more attention. Seemingly, accepting of his answer, Kurenai turned back to the path and the trio traveled together, each wrestling with their own thoughts. Guy was concerned about his redhead friend. Proud, but still very concerned for him. There was no question that tonight the man had made some enemies. Unfortunately, some fairly powerful ones too. Politically speaking, that is. He did not like the way the elders oppressed the man, but he had not intervened because the redhead had looked to have everything in hand. He was sure now that Niji's admiration for the main would be beyond cemented by now, and after tonight would probably explode. He learned tonight that Haruki was an orphan, which probably contributed in some ways to the loner mentality if he had grown up that way, and his mission to Kumo probably compounded that further. Then there was Haruki's training. They all knew what he would be facing soon, and his opponent was no joke. With the pressure of the council on him, Haruki would have to pull off a solid victory against the leader of their village. Guy wasn't sure he could do that himself without using his ace, and there wasn't much point in doing that since the cost is his life. This left Guy with a final nagging question that culminated from all the tensions surrounding his newest friend. How prepared are you, Haruki? It was upon reaching this conclusion that an idea began forming in his mind. Perhaps there was a way to be sure Haruki was prepared after all. He'd have to put it by the others, of course, but Guy didn't think they would be opposed. The group, after a good ways of walking in fretful but companionable silence, came to a crossroads, and Guy, realizing where they were, stopped walking. It took the others a moment to realize it, but when they did, they too stopped and looked back at their arguably most eccentric friend. Guy just smiled at them and gave a thumbs up, moonlight reflecting off his teeth. Thank you, Kurenai, Haruki, for a most youthful evening. It was a pleasure to accompany you both. Kurenai, you look absolutely stunning in that dress, and Haruki, thank you for my gift and for a wonderful day of training. I hope your own continues to go well. Now I must bid you both good night. The man then made a small bow. Before he could leave, however, the others gratefully replied with their thanks, and Haruki saying further, No need to worry, Guy. I will be ready when the time comes. With a nod and a farewell, Guy turned down his street and disappeared into the night. Kurenai and Haruki continue on as the turn to her own home had yet to arrive. After a minute more of quiet reflection, one of the two came to a decision. Glancing to her right at the red-headed man that walked brooding quietly as if no one else would notice so long as he didn't say anything, Kurenai decided it was time to share an observation of her own. Thank you, Haruki, for my dress. Suffice to say that little statement had all the effect she was going for. The redhead whips his head to face her, his eyes slightly wide, mind probably racing for some deflection or excuse. Well, Kurenai was going to have none of that. Just as he made to open his mouth, Kurenai cut him off. And don't bother denying it. I know for a fact that Asuma didn't pick the gift out even if it was gift from him. Shoulders slumping in defeat, Haruki sighed. How did you know? And for the record, he did buy it even if I helped him get a present. Kurenai frowned at the worry and disappointment that seeped into his voice. The man sounded defeated of all things. That's not what she had meant to accomplish with her revelation. This would need to be addressed immediately. Haruki, don't get me wrong, it doesn't lessen the magnitude of Asuma's effort that he had help, and I honestly was expecting something like a candle or chocolates from him. That he got help to get me something I truly would love is a point in his favor. Haruki seemed to relax considerably then, which only served to further confuse her. Why did Haruki care so much? That still doesn't answer how you knew, though. Haruki's reply broke her from her thoughts. Well, you aren't the only one that has shopping to do, Haruki, and you also aren't the only one who knows how to stay out of sight. I was across the street when I saw the three of you enter the store. I was going to go in and join you when I noticed you and Asuma go towards the Kunoichi section. I know because I had been to that shop earlier and had already looked through it. If I could have afforded it, I honestly was considering purchasing the dress you selected. After that, it wasn't very hard to figure out, and I left so as to not ruin his surprise to me. I don't know how, but you knew exactly what I wanted and help Asuma do something special for me. I just wanted to thank you for it. She finished with a soft smile and then realized they had stopped walking. In fact, this was the intersection for her turn. Perfect timing, she thought. The redhead looked at her sheepishly while scratching the back of his head. Well, it's what any friend would do. It wasn't a big deal, but you're welcome, I guess. Averting his eyes and beginning to feel awkward. He didn't exactly know how to deal with this sort of thing, but he didn't want to be rude and just rush off. That would only make them more persistent. Thankfully, though, he was saved from any further reply when his red-eyed friend continued. Anyway, there is something I would like to ask you about. Kurenai said, hesitance evident in her body language. Curious as to what she could be asking about, the redhead gave her his full attention and a small smile. You see, being teammate sensei was not my first time being sensei. While you were gone, a girl was born in the Kurama clan that had their unique bloodline limit. The ability to make genjutsu real. Her name was Yakumo. The redhead finished for her with a sincere smile on high face and understanding in his glittering cerulean eyes. Kurenai's eyes widen in shock as her mouth hangs open, very unladylike. How did you? She stopped when he raised his hand. Well, you see, as the head of the new sealing division, it's my job to know who has what seals and why. I was given her file this morning and am completely aware of the situation and the role that you played in it. I am truly sorry for the burden you had to bear in that. If I had been here, things could have been different. Please forgive me for that. He finished with a bow at the waist. Haruki, please don't do that, there is no way you could have known. Please get up. She says, grabbing his shoulders and forcing him straight. He flinched slightly when she touched him, causing her to feel the coiled power in his shoulders. Had this been a different time, she might have even blushed at the contact. But does this mean that you can help? Can she be a ninja again? She asks, her voice betraying her. Perhaps she had been around Hinata too much. The redhead looks at her, smiles. Absolutely. It's a promise. And I never go back on my word, that's my nindo. It may take some time, but I promise Kurenai-chan. She will conquer her demons once and for all. There wasn't much of a point in hiding what he was planning, since there was no doubt she would find out later, and if he was lucky this would keep her distracted and away from what he really wanted kept hidden. Kurenai trembled a bit, eyes glistening with tears of relief in the moonlight. And in that moment she kissed him on the cheek, enough to leave a lipstick mark. Thank you, Haruki-kun. Suffice to say, Haruki had not been expecting that. He immediately started stammering and his face became as red as his hair. This only made Kurenai giggle a bit. One thing was for sure, this man had a heart of gold. Something tugged at the back of her mind, but for the time being she didn't really care. Good night, Haruki. Thank you for being such a gentleman, but I can make it home from here. I will see you soon, she said as she began walking down her road. After all, Asuma was no doubt waiting for her back at the apartment, and it would just be simpler if she remained the only person who knew that. Haruki, whose mind was still trying to recover from all the emotions that were waylaying him, was frozen in place as he watched her beautiful form disappear around the corner. Well, at least no one was here to see that. The last thing he wanted to do was complicate things with Asuma. Or so he thought. As Haruki turns to walk down his road, a presence makes itself known just to the side of a light pole at the edge of the street. He knows immediately who it is and turns in the man's direction, sighing to himself. What does he want? Good evening, Ginma. Standing there leaning against the pole in his standard jonin attire was the man himself, his traditional seven needle in his mouth. Yo, what's up? The man replies with a half wave and a smirk. How long have you been there? Haruki asks with just a hint of nervousness. Long enough to know you still got a few miracles in your pocket. The seven jonin replies casually as he points to his cheek. Haruki blushes as he tries to whip her mark of his cheek, condensing water from the air a bit to help wash it away. You know, that was a private conversation and I don't think Kurenai would really appreciate rumors. Ginma took a second to tear his eyes away from the impressive display of affinity manipulation to look into the redhead's annoyed, accusatory cerulean gaze. Holding up his hands in a placating gesture, hey, I'm not gonna say anything, I know she wasn't doing anything that wasn't on the up and I am not one for drama anyway. Too much work. Besides, the last thing I want to do is cause problems for you or Asuma. That seemed to calm the redhead down a little, but only a little. Rubbing his forehead, Haruki tried not to say. He really had had enough of all feces interactions for one day. I swear, Ginma, you are part Nara. Why were you out here anyway? Seeing the redhead joke a little, Ginma relaxed a bit. Perhaps he hadn't blown it after all. Well, it's a nice clear night and I had a lot on my mind, so I was out for a walk when I ran across you too. I didn't want to interrupt, but I remembered there was something I wanted to ask you, and sometimes you're a hard man to find, so I decided to wait. When the redhead didn't react one way or another, Ginma pressed on. Do you mind if I walk with you for a bit? Haruki desperately wanted to say yes. He was tired, stressed, and his emotions were all over the place, and he had a growing suspicion that whatever the man wanted, it was leaning toward answers more than favors. And answer was not something he wanted to give right now. So it was with great frustration and confusion that he found himself say, sure, I still got a little bit to go. And with an abrupt turn and quick measured steps, the redhead departed down the road. Ginma, a little surprised by the sudden change in pace, leans of the pole and rushes to catch up with the redhead. Walking in sort of a tense calm, Gemma decides to make his move. So how long have you been a medical ninja? At the sidelong questioning look, Ginma clarifies. I heard about what happened with you and Yamanaka-sama this morning. When I asked him about it, he mentioned your hand and how you were supposedly going to heal it on your own, which means you a fairly skilled meta-ninja to be able to do so. And judging by the state it's in now in comparison to how it was described to me, I can confirm you weren't lying to him. After stuffing his hands in his pockets at that comment and seeing that Ginma is too informed to deny, Haruki decides to be as vague as possible. I've always been good at healing, just something about my body. I was taught by a friend of mine when we were younger. She's dead now. I don't consider myself a medical ninja. To say so wouldn't be giving the title its proper respect. He was of course frustrated. People knew about his confrontation with Inochi, but it wasn't exactly a secret encounter. Perhaps it was a bit much to hope for. Ginma nodded to himself and saw an opening in that statement he could pursue as they walked. A gentle breeze had started up. Well, you seem pretty skilled to be able to heal a chakra burn that bad. But if you don't feel confident, then I know someone you could get a second opinion from. His name is Dr. Takumi. Ever heard of him? Ginma asked, eyeing the redhead. How are you going to weasel your way out of this one? On the outside, Haruki seems to remain calm, though a bit of what could be taken as frustration seeps into his voice when he replies, I suppose I've heard of him in passing. Isn't that Hayate-san's doctor? How is he, by the way? Ginma would have laughed if there wasn't so much tension at the moment. Really, Haruki, I don't know how you became a ninja because you couldn't lie to save your life. Deflection? That's the best you've got? Yeah, he really knows his stuff. And Hayate's doing ever since he got you cure. Ginma dropped casually while watching the redhead out of the corner of his eye for any reaction. Still completely stony face, but now with seemingly all of his muscles coiled, it was obvious that the man was uncomfortable, though that was not about to dissuade Ginma in the slightest. Why in the world would you think I had anything to do with that whatsoever? Well, for starters, that wasn't a denial. Then there's the fact all the doctor would tell us was that the person who helped him was friend and someone who looked like they needed help. Of all of us, you were the most recent to become aware of his condition. You're a guy, so you fit the key part. And you fit the description perfectly, plus the timing of your arrival and all you involved in, and I'm sure you're underplaying your skill considering what you thought about helping Anko. Then there is Hayate's recent promotion on the same night that you appear to be the Hokage's right-hand man. And, finally, Haruki stops walking. The wind that had been but a gentle breeze begins to blow in earnest. Ginma, unaware of the source of the sudden change and not paying too close attention, decide to make his final case. And when I asked the receptionist who had been by to see the good doctor, your name was on the list just hours before Hayate was treated. Quite a coincidence, don't you think, Haruki? Gritting his teeth, the redhead as so frustrated he wanted to explode. Why couldn't they just leave it alone? How had he been so careless? He was so tired of this cornering crap. He didn't even look to meet Ginma's eyes as he tried to control to trembling in his limbs. His chakra leaking just a bit in his agitated state. Haruki! Were you the one that he was cut off when the man snarled and turned, pinning his soul with his stormy blue eyes, a boom of thunder clapping overhead, and it's then that he feels the saturation of static in the air. The entire area had changed into a sudden storm and the wind seemed to blow in every direction. Yet despite all the commotion, none of it hindered the single word that left the redhead's lips. Yes! Haruki shouted in his face. Ginma began to realize that perhaps backing the redhead into a corner wasn't his greatest plan. What kind of power did this man have that the weather response to his chakra? Haruki snaps out again, clearly not satisfied with the silence, and asks, why do you want to know so bad? Why does it matter? I asked for it to be kept secret. If you were so certain of it, why ask me? Why go through all this? More chakra began to be released with each word before the tempest began to really boom and the winds howl. They were of course alone of the street, but Ginma was sure anyone still out was hurrying indoors at this rate. Ginma responds with controlled calm, though internal almost panics. It matters, because I want to understand you. Because even though I will guard your secret, I want to understand and help the man that saved my friend's life. A man I hope will become a friend to me. A man who I know is clearly hurting himself, that needs help but avoids it. Your hand is a perfect example. I want to help, we all do. You saved Hate's life but don't want us to know. It doesn't make sense. So please, why? Haruki looks at Gemma with a mixture of surprise, pain, frustration, and small amount of hope maybe. There was so much turmoil that could be seen in the weary man's eyes that it practically mirrored the storm he had unknowingly created. As if desperate to release himself from the concern and gratitude of the Ginma and his friends, Haruki pleaded, it wasn't even my cure, but something a dear friend who's long dead made. I couldn't just not do something. Gemma replies, pointedly, getting frustrated himself and a little bit afraid if he was honest. And yet you expect us to do nothing concerning you? He tries to reach out to the redhead, but the man just recoils and turns away. The wind howling all the more now, carrying a mist. Haruki sighs in exasperation, you just don't understand, you can't. But before Gemma can reply, another presence makes itself known. Are you alright, Haruki? Asked Kakashi in a light tone. The silver-haired Jonin was glaring pointedly at Genma with a look that said, "You had better hope he says yes for your sake." To which Genma gulped slightly and immediately withdrew his hand. Upon hearing the voice, Haruki looks up, eyes wide, and the wind stops completely. Taking a moment to settle his voice, he looks at the Cyclops in relief. "Yes, I'm fine, I'm just a block away from home." "What are you doing here?" Staring at the two of them with a look that doubted every word that just left the redhead's mouth, Kakashi replied, "Well, I had walked Naruto home after training today and decided to wait for you to see how your fancy dinner had gone, and it was a lovely evening to be out. When that began to change, I came looking for you," he said, emphasizing that he was well aware why exactly the evening had changed. Turning to Genma, he asked again, "So are you both alright?" Gemma, sensing the dismissal, decides he had gotten enough of what he came for, that it was as good a time as any to bow out. "No, nothing's wrong. Was just out for a walk when I ran into Haruki-san. It's about time I was headed back anyway. Have a good night, Haruki, Kakashi." He had a lot to think about. Whatever was wrong with Haruki was much more complicated and ran much deeper than he initially thought. And if this was a potential outcome of the man's emotions getting stirred up, well, it was no small wonder that Kakashi had looked at him with a death glare. Allowing the man to disappear down the road, Kakashi then closed the remaining distance from the light pole he had been leaning on until he stood next to Haruki. He didn't say a word and seemed content just to wait for the redhead to begin the remainder of his journey home. It was clear he was not going to be dissuaded from joining. Haruki didn't disappoint. As soon as he was able, the man began walking down the road toward his apartment, trying his best to not think about the confrontation that had just occurred. But no matter how much he tried, he couldn't get that damned look of concern on Genma's face out of his head. And he swore if Kakashi so much as said a peep before he actually made it through his door, the man was going to be sneezing icicles for a week. They made it the rest of the way in complete and somehow pleasant silence without anyone stopping them. Haruki quickly opened the door and stepped inside, leaving it open for his friend to follow, which of course he did. As soon as the door was closed and one hand seal ladder, Haruki completely released his suppressed chakra and let its agitated flow envelope him. It was so nice to finally have a release that he almost forgot the other person in the room. Turning and looking at Kakashi, he found the man standing there shuddering as a cold sweat broke out on his body. "I'm not sure I'll ever get used to that. The feeling is just too unreal. Seriously though, no one should have chakra that potent or that much of the stuff. Only Kage-tier shinobi and Jinchuriki had that kind of raw power at their disposal." Haruki had the decency to look at least a little sheepish. "Sorry about that, I just could quite wait till I got to my room. And I had already activated the masking and suppression seals, so I kinda just went for it." Waving him off, Kakashi took a seat at the table as Haruki went and began making tea. Kakashi decided it was now time to see what was up. "So what did Genma want to talk to you about?" Setting the kettle down on the eye before turning and leaning against the stove so he could face him, arms crossed, he wanted to know how long I had been a medical ninja. Kakashi just kept looking at him. "Okay, and what did he ask that actually bothered you?" Haruki looked at him before sighing. If Genma already knew, then there wasn't much of a point in not telling Kakashi. Who knows who else knew by now? He anted to know if I was the person that provided Hayate's cure. Kakashi just nodded. "And were you?" Haruki averted his eyes from the man to the clock on the wall, which read 1:05. "Yes," he said quietly, though he was sure the other man had heard him. Was all Kakashi said. Haruki looked up at him, eyes slightly narrow at the lack of reaction. "You knew?" Kakashi could help but I smile. "Yes, I did. I went by the hospital the day after Hayate was cured and checked the record and found your name. I wasn't hard to connect the dot after that." Seeing the redhead tense up again, he quickly continued. "Don't worry though, I knew you would want it kept secret, so I classified the record. Genma must have gotten there before me and seen it if he was sure enough to confront you about it." Haruki just nodded before smiling and tilting his head almost in a question. "Wait, you actually covered for me?" Kakashi just shrugged. "It's no one else's business really if you don't want anyone to know, and I was fairly sure that was the case. It was least I could do since your plate at the time was kind of full. Still is, by the way, I don't know how you do it." He finished shaking his head. The redhead just chuckled as the kettle sounded that the water was ready. "Kagebushin are truly wondrous things," he said, pouring them each a glass before setting the kettle back on the deactivated eye. They each enjoyed their tea in silence for a minute or so, enjoying the other's company before Kakashi decided to speak again. "So what was it that really upset you? I know that storm was you." Now that I know what to look for, I can feel it. What did Genma say after you told him? Haruki continued to look at his tea glass as he thought over how best to respond. He couldn't quite bring himself to lie to the man, but he couldn't tell him the whole truth. He asked me why. He said softly. Oh, why what? Why I helped them. Why I am in need of help, as he says. Why do I not really on the strength of others? Continued, his voice betraying him a bit, still looking at the steaming cup in front of him. Ah. I see. And these questions bother you? He got silence as his answer, which told him all he needed to know. Can I ask why they bother you? Kakashi asks gently and pauses, giving him a chance to respond. When he doesn't, is it because the answers are things you don't like, or do you not know the answer? More silence. So a bit of both then. Choosing that moment to drink his tea and placing his mask firmly back in place, pleased that Haruki didn't even try to look as he did so. Well, I can see why that would not be pleasant. Though I think I have an idea if you would hear it, the man offers with a hidden smile. Haruki looks up from his glass, eyes with but a flicker of light in them. Taking that as his cue, the copy ninja continues, it's the source of Konoha's strength. The power of the will of fire. And the reason why he asked those questions. Bonds. Cerulean eyes widen in shock as the spark inside them dances and grows. Kakashi smiles to himself even as he continues, it's obvious to me and perhaps to a few others that you've been through a lot more than what you've let on, and perhaps those things will stay your secrets forever, Haruki, but that doesn't mean that you can't have friends. Whatever it is or has happened to you, your strength will only increase with others by your side. It is the way of our village. Haha, don't tell me you've been away so long that you've forgotten that. He finished with a joke and an eye smile. Haruki smiled a bit at that too, chuckled lightly, even though he felt like he'd been hit by all 9 of Kurama's tails. If only it were that easy, the redhead answered softly. Sensing the internal turmoil inside his new friend, Kakashi elaborated, Haruki, no one expects you to form bonds overnight. All I'm saying is be open to the chance to form them. Try and you'll find that things just might get easier. He finished and looked at the clock. It's late, we've had a long day and tomorrow will probably be one too. I would ask about the dinner, but I think you've had enough stressful cryptic conversations for one day. He stood and cleared the table while the redhead got up and stretched. They made their way back to the living room where Kakashi went over to the couch and Haruki headed to the bedroom. You know, at the rate I'm over here it would be far more convenient if I just moved in. Kakashi said as Haruki made it to the door. He doesn't see the interested look in the redhead's eyes or the sincere smile on his face as he closes the door, hoping for a good night's rest. Panting filled dimly light the room as the sound of sandals clanked against the floor echoed down the hall. Hinata, report. He ordered while taking inventory of those that had managed to make it inside. The Byakugan active, the young jonin calmly took in the scene around them for miles in every direction. They found our position, Hokage-sama, they have us completely surrounded. All standard and reserve exits have been blocked. We are trapped. Naruto gritted his teeth. This was bad. Everything had gone fine until they approached the border. Now on the last stretch, they found themselves cornered like a rat. How he found them was anyone's guess at this point. He must have predicted we'd come here. How is the defense team faring? Anyone managed to get into the tunnels? He asked, concerned for his fellow Kage and those that volunteered to support him. Hinata calm as ever relayed what she saw. All units are down except for Sasori. He seems to be holding them off, but if they continue their assault at this rate, even he will be overwhelmed. A small tear went down her face. Naruto closed his eyes in pain and to honor those who'd fallen. Kiba would be missed dearly. Time for mourning was later though. And the passages? Voice unwavering despite her clear emotional pain, your seals seem to be working. The Zetsu cannot phase through. At least not yet. That last part she muttered, but he heard it nonetheless as he clenched his fists in anger. Continue to monitor the situation. Inform me if anything changes. More footsteps were heard and he turned to see Ganma, Rado, and Aoba along with several Sunishinobi. The tunnels are secure, Hokage-sama, and all seals have been placed. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement before replying, don't forget that our mission here is to escort the survivors of Iwagakure safely into Fire Nation territory. And then returning to his thoughts. What are we going to do? This was the last defense bunker that Inoki had marked in the Land of Earth. Gaara is busy in the Land of Wind and Sasuke has to stay at the border to protect the refugees. No reinforcements can be called on. Naruto thought, looking out over the group of civilians and shinobi refugees they had been escorting. The land of Earth had fallen. It was not even a year after the land of lightning had finally been overrun. He and the Godain Kazekage were leading teams to gather the survivors of the onslaught and buy their borders time to prepare for the onslaught. They had succeeded in both objectives, but now the return journey to friendly territory was proving to be far more difficult. Boom! They heard echo through the caverns and the ground trembled. Hinata immediately reported. Hokage-sama, they have started bombarding the weak points of the structure. Since they can't get in, they are trying to bury us. Deidara is with them. Damn Kabuto and his zombie jutsu. What of Sasori? He asked quickly as the others started to panic a bit. Another boom and rumble. His puppet count is very low, Hokage-sama. I am unsure how much longer he will be able to hold off the enemy. I don't think he can engage Deidara in time. Came the neutral and knowing reply from the raven-haired clan head. Can we get to him before the cavern collapses? Boom! Boom! Cracks began to appear along the walls and ceiling even as he saw her shake her head solemnly. We've got to get out. Came a shout from one of the civilians. We can't get out. Was the reply from an IWA shinobi that had remained seated, clearly having given up. Naruto, you have to use it. Genma shouted. As rocks began to fall and tunnels collapsed, giving Naruto a look that was both stern and serene. Naruto knew what Genma wanted him to do, and after doing a quick head count, was completely against it. No! I can't take all of you with it. We will find another way. He shouted back, mind racing for another solution. The others, he could tell, had caught on to what Genma was referring to. There isn't time. You have to go. It's okay, Hokage-sama. Genma shouted back as rocks continued to collapse from the ceiling. It's alright. Turned by indecision, Naruto was frozen. Innocent people he was sent to save, or his loyal friends and comrades that had fought by his side for years. It was an impossible choice. More explosions sounded as the roof finally began to cave in. It was time to choose. Naruto! They shouted as the boulders fell on them. Haruki! Came a voice that cut through the world like a kunai through cloth. Instantly Haruki became aware of three things. He was screaming, sitting up in his bed in a cold sweat, and he was looking into Kakashi's lone eye that was staring at him with concern while gripping his shoulders, shaking him lightly. Stopping himself from screaming, Haruki notices his body is trembling and his chakra is running around crazy, though little had actually been released. Breath, Haruki. Just breath. Came the soothing words from his silver-haired friend, you're not trapped. You are safe. No one is gone. It's just you and I. Breath. Haruki did just that as his dark eyes stared into Kakashi's and he breathed in and out, slowly calming his hastily hammering heart. He glances at his clock, which read 4:17, and groans. Don't look at that. Just look at me and breath. Kakashi reprimands. The redhead looks back at Kakashi and did as he was told, too flustered to really argue. After about a minute, Haruki had calmed down to Kakashi's satisfaction. Now sit here and stay calm, I'm going to get you a glass of water. The man then got up slowly and carefully and left the room. His bedroom. Wait. Realization hit him like Baijidama to the face. Kakashi was in his room, quickly getting up, not caring he was only in boxers. Haruki rushed over to the door and found that it wasn't broken and none of the seals seemed tampered with, though he did find them inactive. This made Haruki smack himself. Was I really so careless that I left the door unlocked and security seals inactive? Ahem, came a deliberate cough from his side. I thought I told you to stay put. Kakashi said in a tone that brokered no argument. Haruki, seeing the look from Kakashi, quickly stood and backtracked to his bed before sitting. Sorry, I just needed to know how you got in here. It should have been impossible. Walking over to him while staring at him with a bland look, the man replied, no doubt to protect your innumerable number of secrets. Because I'm sure they're not there to keep people from knowing you are in trouble or prevent them from aiding you. Whether it was something as silly as a spider or serious as a night terror. Right, Haruki? Kakashi said with a look that spoke volumes. Haruki gulped as he realized Kakashi hadn't forgotten about the last time. Kakashi, seemingly satisfied enough to move on, continued, relaxing his posture a bit. Well, don't worry, I am not really that concerned with anything else except you at the moment. Your secrets are safe. Now drink this. Haruki quickly gulped down the glass and handed it back to him, whipping his mouth. Kakashi then continued before leaving the room, now back to bed. Haruki huffed even as he laid back down, annoyed at being ordered around in his own room as if he was 10 or something. He doesn't have to be so bossy about it. Besides, I got like 2 hours of sleep, I should be fine. And I'm not going to get back to sleep at this rate. Wait. Kakashi didn't close the door. Glancing up after hearing some scuffling, Haruki saw Kakashi set down a chair arm's length from his bed facing the door. He held a pillow under one arm and a blanket in the other. What are you doing? Haruki asked before Kakashi sat down chest against the back of the chair as he set up his pillow and blanket. Making sure you go back to sleep with no further issues. Don't worry, it's just for tonight. The man replied lightly before looking at Haruki. Now sleep. Haruki blinks owlishly before coming to the decision that he's not going to be able to remove the man without a fight, and if he was honest, it did help a little having him right there. He always slept better when he had someone he trusted watching his back. Fine, he said before rolling over on his side and closed his eyes. Besides, if he couldn't sleep, he could always go scheme with Kurama. And Kakashi would be none the wiser. And so, the Cyclopes kept his lonely vigil over his friend the remainder of the night. And there were no further issues, thank Kami. Hopefully today would bring better news. The following morning was a light affair. Haruki opened his eyes to the smell of burnt toast. He quickly sat up and turned to find Kakashi's chart draped in his blanket and his pillow on the floor. Quickly recognizing what must have happened and glancing at the clock to find it at precisely 9:37, the redhead got out of bed before hastily heading towards the kitchen to hopefully save breakfast. What he finds when he rounds the corner is both amusing and surprising. On the table, already prepared and apparently still warm, was 2 omelets and a bowl of rice at 2 places with a glass of milk each. Off in the corner juggling burning bread was a certain masked ninja who was doing his best to curse quietly while trying to make the toaster explode with his glare. Itai itai. Stupid thing. How hard is it to cook toast? I swear a koton jutsu would be more effective than this stupid thing. Why doesn't this thing work? Deciding to come to the man's aid, Haruki chuckled lightly. That would be because you only pull the lever all the way down if the object you're putting in is frozen. Genius. Kakashi whipped around at the sound of his voice before smiling. Good morning, Haruki. I wanted to surprise you with a breakfast that didn't explode your kitchen, and I was almost successful. Haruki just smirked. Yes. Almost. Kakashi rolled his eye but still smiled as the redhead walked over and took his seat. Kakashi quickly joined him, completely forgetting about toast and stupid machines with no instructions. I mean, seriously, how was he supposed to know? Haruki eyed the food for a moment before glancing up at his friend's hopeful face and decided to risk it. Taking a bite of the omelet, Haruki savors it in his mouth before swallowing, taking great care to not show any facial reaction at all. Kakashi had leaned so far in his observation of his red-headed friend that he was practically across the table. Well? What do you think? How did I do? He asked impatiently. Haruki hums to himself as if debating in his head what he's going to say. I give it a B. Kakashi stares at him for a moment before smiling. That's way better than I was expecting. It was his best dish. After all, it was hard to screw up eggs. Haruki just laughed. Ha ha ha, honestly I'd have to agree. They continued their meal, bantering back and forth, talking about random things and training. It soon became apparent to Haruki that Kakashi seemed to have no intention of discussing the previous night's events. And honestly, he was glad for that. He certainly was not in the mood to discuss that. Kurama had told him what he said in his sleep. Nothing crucial, but nothing he wanted to elaborate on either. The fox couldn't wake him without releasing some of his chakra, which they knew he couldn't do for obvious reasons. Soon enough, the 2 jonin cleaned up and got ready for the day. Haruki even convinced Kakashi to just take a shower there to save time. He was sure to give the man his privacy, and when he himself came out after bathing, found that the silver-haired man had already left, leaving a note that he would catch up with him later. After locking up and getting the necessary materials he would need for Team 10's training later today, Haruki locked up his room and apartment before heading out, wondering just what was in store for him today. Haruki's first stop of the day was to go by his office to do his paperwork and refresh his clones for later. Part of the reason he wasn't in a terrible hurry was because he had left 3 clones in his office that night when he left to continue working. So in terms of work, he had never actually left. He approached the Hokage Tower and was greeted with nods of respect from the Chunin on duty. He waved at the guards in return, being sure to use the hand that he had kept hidden yesterday to show it was completely healed. Whether they noticed or not was a completely different issue that he honestly didn't care about. He passed the Hokage's office on his way, and the old man's secretary waved at him with a sweet smile and a greeting good morning, though there was clearly an appraising look in her eyes. This time he smiled back and waved again with his healed hand. This seemed to be what she was looking for as her posture relaxed, and she nodded to him before writing a note down off to the side. No doubt about his condition. Still, this didn't bother him in the slightest and was determined to start the morning in a good mood. And he believed that up until he rounded the corner to the hallway his office was on. Lo and behold, standing in front of his office door was one of his least favorite people in all of Konoha. "How can I help you, Danzo-san?" The old man turned and greeted the red-head Jonin. "Good morning, Haruki-san." "Yes, in fact I've been waiting to meet with you. Is now a good time?" Haruki glanced at the door and finding that no seals were glowing, it was evidence that the man had had no desire or made no effort to enter the room before Haruki's arrival. That was a point in the old man's favor. Taking a moment to calm himself and observe his surroundings, he realizes that he is in fact alone. The guards were stationed at the ends of the hallway, but nothing else was out of place and there were no bodyguards with Danzo. Another point in the man's favor. Stealing his face and emotions as best he can, Haruki nods to the man before forming a hand seal. Instantly purple, blue, and red seals flared to life all across the door before fading. The redhead then walked forward and unlocked it. "This is quite an extensive security system. There are even more here than at your home, I should think. Some of these symbols I can't even understand their purpose. Your skill in Fuinjutsu continues to impress me," the Warhawk said without looking away from the door. Haruki just hummed as he opened the door to find the office furnished and organized. Good, they had gotten a lot of work done. He paused for a moment in the door looking at his secretary's desk while absorbing the memories of the clones he had left behind last night. "Is there a problem, Haruki-san?" the old man asked as he stopped behind the man. "No, I was just reminding myself that I told my secretary not to come in until the afternoon is all." Haruki says, quickly recovering as he made his way into his actually office room. If Danzo believed him or not, he didn't show it as he sat in one of the two chairs across the desk from Haruki. "I should be thankful, I suppose, that I am getting such an impromptu meeting, especially for you apparent distaste for me. Yet you've given me a private audience." Curious. Trying his best not to lose his patience. He would rather deal with Orochimaru than this guy. Haruki all but growled out, "What is it you want, Danzo?" Unfazed Danzo continued, "There are several topics I would like to discuss with you. First dash." The man places one of the files he was holding down on table. "These are the list of sealing techniques I know and would add to the village armory per your review, of course." Haruki just stared at the folder before looking back at the Warhawk and raising an eyebrow. Danzo just pulls out another folder and lays it on top of the first. "These are the list of Umbu operatives that I am aware have Fuinjutsu training as well as the applications of my personal guard for the program." That caused a bit of a reaction from the redhead as his eyes narrowed. Weighing his options, he wanted to flat out refuse. But perhaps having them go through the program on some level would give him an avenue of control. Was it a risk Haruki was willing to take? And finally, here at the list of elders on the Hyuga Council, along with a summation of their skills, records, connections, and personalities. The last fold had barely hit the desk before Haruki was on his feet. "What kind of game are you playing? I don't know what you're so upset about. It's not like what happened last night was much of a secret. The entire clan saw what happened. I just figure I would try and attend an olive branch in the form of information that you no doubtly need on your new opponents. It gives you an advantage that they are sorely lacking, as is most of the village when it come to you. Even so, you're a spy, aren't you? Surely you understand the benefit of something like this. And I assure you this is just a compilation of information that you could attain all on your own if you wish." Haruki stared at the crippled man for a long moment before retaking his seat. He still wasn't happy about it. "Why are you helping me?" Haruki asked, leaning forward. "You seem awfully convinced that I should be opposed to you somehow, despite my actions in front of your very eyes." "I have done nothing but supported you. I simply have allowed for the possibility that Hiruzen has truly gone senile, but you don't seem too concerned with the event that is rapidly approaching. In fact, I would wager you are more concerned with audience and not the task." Pausing, the Warhawk finally fixes the redhead with a piercing look. "Make no mistake. I am incredibly curious as to who you are and where you come from, what your abilities are, what information you have. Though I'm beginning to piece some things together. I sincerely doubt your actual surname is Kazuma. However, you are a great asset to Konoha and your presence has finally kicked Saru in the pants a bit, which I have been wanting to see for years. He's becoming proactive again, which is something Konoha desperately needs. So Haruki, please don't be so surprised that for the time being at least, I am on your side. Having said his piece and not giving the redhead a chance to respond, Danzo stands and excuses himself. Now I'm sure you have a great deal to owe and I wouldn't want to cause you to be late to your training appointment because I delayed you. Good day. And with the fading rhythmic tapping of his cane he was gone, leaving a rather flabbergasted Haruki. Perhaps Danzo hadn't fallen so far yet. Good, that gave him time. For the next hour or so Haruki went through the very seals that the man had provided. There had been quite a few that he hadn't realized someone in the village had access to and went about categorizing them by difficulty, danger to the user and others, and overall usefulness. It was then that he heard another knock at his door. Come in, he called out, not looking up from his desk. Haruki heard the shuffling of feet and smelled the faint scent of tobacco as he finished the last line of the seal description he was working on. He looked up to see standing before him the Hokage and his two chief advisors. Quickly standing himself and he greeted them. Ah, Hokage-sama, I was not expecting you. I was not expecting you. If you will wait a moment I will grab another chair. Hiruzen raised his hand to stop him. That will not be necessary, I am just here for a moment to address a complaint submitted by that Hyuga clan elders. Would you mind securing the room, Haruki? The old man said with a neutral face. Haruki does so with a flare of his chakra. The room glows with seals of all colors before fading. Internally he groans at the tongue lashing he's probably about to receive. After the seals fade and Haruki confirms the room is secure, Hiruzen smirks and makes his address. Good job, Haruki. Haruki blinks. Well, this is not what he had been expecting. Before he can reply the Hokage turns on his heel. Now that you have been properly chastised I must return to my duties. Haruki, if you would please. Haruki just nods numbly before deactivating the seals and the Hokage leaves without another word. Realizing that the others did not leave with him he turns to them and raises an eyebrow. It was Koharu that spoke. Don't act so surprised, Haruki. Hiruzen would smack those old crones over their heads with Enma himself if he could. Though we wouldn't recommend continued antagonization and we do have to follow up on such complaints, Hiruzen would sooner promote you than take any action against you over such an issue. Especially after finding out the details of the evening from Hayashi himself. Hamura added, chuckling. You should have seen the look on his face when he heard the elders had filed a complaint with the Hokage's office. I swear I saw his eyes begin to twitch. Haruki smiled himself. He had to admit such a sight would amuse him too. Then may I ask what I can do for you too? Getting down to business, Koharu set down a file she had been carrying. This is all the information and details pertaining to the village-wide evaluations you had a schedule as well as any related shinobi information concerning Fuinjutsu users. The list is not very impressive. The first batch of testing and the basic introduction are scheduled for tomorrow morning in the academy. The students are getting a week's break to make space or this. After she finished Hamura began, and we came to inform you that the barrier core is scheduled for review tomorrow afternoon. I trust you have had time to look over the current schematic and upon your review have recommendations for improvements prepared. It was not a question. Haruki nodded. He of course hadn't, but his clones had. Having delivered their messages the two elders stood together and prepared to leave. Is there anything further you need to perform your duties? Hamura asked from the door. Nothing I can think of at the moment, but if something comes to mind I'll be sure to let you know. Haruki replied. He was honestly very confused by this whole interaction. First Danzo and now these two. Weren't they opposed to him at every step? He was broken from high thoughts when Koharu spoke from the door. Do try to keep your political enemies to a minimum though if you would. Clean up after Hiruzen is enough of a task as it is. And with that final scolding she was gone. Haruki had just enough time to file the folders away and create a clone before there was once again a knock at the door, though this time it opened without his permission. Of course, the only person with the authority and gall to do so was of course Shikaku. Haruki? Do you know what time it is? The man said, gesturing to the clock on the wall. Yes, I'm on my way. I've still got another 30 minutes before their training starts. Shikaku smirks before saying. Before you that might have been true, but they have already been training for about an hour now and that was after waiting 30 minutes. Didn't Asuma tell you? The words had scarcely left the man's mouth before there was a poof and whoosh as the now late Jonin made a clone a race out of his office with a speed Shikaku could barely follow. Shikaku just chucked as he waved to the clone and closed the door behind him, hearing shouts and curses form down the hall. No doubt caused by a certain redhead's haste. That chuckle turned into a full-blown laugh as he stepped outside to find the two elders pressed against the wall as if they had dodged a bull of some kind. Well, Asuma, I almost pity you. He certainly isn't going to be happy when he gets there. That's it for part 10. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.